On the windswept shores of the Bering Sea, where the Arctic Ocean meets the Alaskan wilderness, sits a small town that has become synonymous with one of America's most perplexing mysteries. Nome, Alaska, with a population that has never exceeded 4,000 people, should be a place where everyone knows everyone else's business, where a missing person would be noticed immediately and found quickly. Instead, between 1960 and 2004, 24 residents simply vanished without explanation, creating a statistical anomaly so disturbing that it captured national attention and sparked wild theories about serial killers, government cover-ups, and even alien abductions. What makes Nome's disappearances so unsettling isn't just the number of missing people, but the complete absence of answers. These weren't cases of people leaving town or deciding to start new lives elsewhere. These were individuals who stepped out of their homes, their jobs, their daily routines, and never returned. No bodies were found, no evidence discovered, no witnesses came forward. They simply ceased to exist, leaving behind families, friends, and a community that began to look over their shoulders and wonder who might be next. Tonight, we explore the mystery of Nome's missing 24, a case that divided investigators between natural explanations and something far more sinister lurking in the endless Arctic darkness. Nome, Alaska exists in one of the most isolated and unforgiving environments on Earth. Located on the southern edge of the Seward Peninsula, roughly 540 miles northwest of Anchorage, the town is accessible only by plane or ship, with no road connections to the rest of Alaska. During the brutal winter months, temperatures plummet to 40 degrees below zero. Winds reach hurricane strength, and the sun disappears for months at a time, creating a landscape that can kill the unprepared in minutes. This extreme environment has always made survival challenging, but it also created the perfect conditions for people to disappear without explanation. The town's history is rooted in the gold rush of the early 1900s, when prospectors flocked to the region seeking fortune in the frozen ground. By the 1960s, Nome had settled into a pattern as a regional hub for surrounding native Alaskan villages, a place where traditional subsistence lifestyles mixed uneasily with modern challenges. The isolation that had once protected indigenous communities from outside influences now made them vulnerable in new ways, as social problems including alcoholism, domestic violence, and economic hardship took root in communities with limited resources and support systems. Nome's unique position as a hub community meant that people from across the region regularly traveled to the town for supplies, medical care, and social services. This constant flow of visitors, combined with a transient population of seasonal workers, miners, and government employees, created an environment where someone could disappear without being immediately missed. Unlike southern communities where missing persons reports might be filed within hours, Nome's harsh realities meant that delayed returns were often attributed to weather, mechanical problems, or the simple difficulties of Arctic travel. The town's law enforcement resources were stretched thin across an enormous geographical area, with state troopers responsible for regions larger than most U.S. and states. Communication systems were unreliable. Weather frequently prevented search operations, and the vast wilderness surrounding Nome offered countless places where a person could vanish forever. Even in cases where someone was reported missing quickly, the logistical challenges of mounting search operations in Arctic conditions often meant that crucial hours or days were lost before any meaningful investigation could begin. The pattern of disappearances in Nome defied easy explanation from the very beginning. Unlike typical missing persons cases that cluster around specific demographics or circumstances, Nome's vanished represented a cross-section of the community. Men and women, young and old, locals and visitors, people with troubled histories and those without any apparent problems, all simply failed to return home one day. Some disappeared during severe weather that could easily explain their fate, but others vanished on clear days when conditions posed no obvious threat to experienced Arctic residents. The cases that drew the most attention were those that seemed to defy logical explanation. People disappeared from locations where they should have been easily found, or under circumstances that suggested they had simply evaporated into thin air. Some were last seen in downtown Nome, walking familiar streets they had traveled countless times before. Others vanished while engaged in routine activities like checking mail, visiting neighbors, or running errands that should have taken minutes to complete. The complete absence of physical evidence in most cases suggested either extraordinary care in concealing crimes or factors beyond normal criminal activity. As the number of missing persons mounted through the 1970s and 1980s, rumors began to circulate throughout Nome and the surrounding communities. Some whispered about a serial killer who had found the perfect hunting ground in a place where bodies might never be found. Others speculated about government experiments, military activities, or even supernatural explanations for the ongoing disappearances. The remoteness of Nome and the federal government's significant presence in Alaska through military bases and research facilities fed conspiracy theories that grew more elaborate with each unexplained vanishing. The situation reached a crisis point in the early 2000s when national media attention focused on Nome's disappearances, partly due to their connection with the 2009 science fiction film The Fourth Kind. The movie, which claimed to be based on true events, depicted the disappearances as evidence of alien abduction, complete with fabricated documentary footage and fake interviews with local residents. While the film was later revealed to be largely fictional, it brought unwanted attention to Nome and added another layer of sensationalism to an already mysterious situation. By 2004, the statistical reality of Nome's missing persons problem had become impossible to ignore. 24 people had vanished from a community whose total population had never exceeded 4,000 residents, creating a rate of disappearance far higher than the national average. The FBI was finally compelled to launch a comprehensive investigation, sending agents to Nome to examine every case, interview hundreds of witnesses, and determine whether the disappearances were connected by anything more than geographical proximity. The federal investigation lasted months and involved extensive reviews of police reports, weather records, and witness statements spanning more than 4 decades. Investigators examined every theory, from serial killers to organized crime, from cult activities to government cover-ups. They conducted interviews with family members, friends, and anyone who might have information about the missing persons. The investigation was thorough, professional, and ultimately reached conclusions that satisfied law enforcement but left many community members unconvinced. The FBI's official conclusion was that Nome's high rate of disappearances could be explained by a combination of excessive alcohol consumption and the extremely harsh Arctic environment. Investigators determined that many of the missing persons had histories of alcohol abuse, and that the brutal winter conditions in Nome created numerous opportunities for intoxicated individuals to become lost and die from exposure. The theory suggested that people who might have survived similar situations in more temperate climates were killed by the unforgiving Arctic environment before they could be found and rescued. This environmental explanation gained support from Alaska's overall statistics for missing persons, which show rates significantly higher than the national average across the state. The vastness of the Alaskan wilderness, combined with extreme weather conditions and limited search and rescue resources, means that people who become lost or injured in remote areas often die before they can be found. The FBI noted that Nome's position on the edge of the Bering Sea, surrounded by tundra and subject to sudden weather changes, created perfect conditions for fatal accidents that left no recoverable evidence. However, many community members and outside observers remained skeptical of the official explanation. Critics pointed out that several of the disappeared had no known alcohol problems and were experienced in Arctic survival techniques. Some vanished during mild weather or from locations where their bodies should have been easily discovered, even if they had died from exposure. The complete absence of remains in almost all cases seemed statistically unlikely if environmental factors were the primary cause, leading some to suspect that other forces were involved. Alternative theories continued to circulate despite the FBI's conclusions. Some investigators suggested that a serial killer or killers had indeed operated in Nome, taking advantage of the community's isolation and the environmental factors that made evidence disposal virtually foolproof. The vast tundra surrounding Nome, with its seasonal freezing and thawing cycles, could easily conceal bodies indefinitely. A killer familiar with local conditions could dispose of victims in ways that would make recovery impossible, especially given the limited law enforcement resources available for extensive searches. More exotic theories persisted among those who rejected both official and conventional criminal explanations. Some pointed to Nome's position within what has been termed the Alaska Triangle, a region where an unusually high number of aircraft disappearances and other mysterious vanishings have occurred. Proponents of supernatural explanations suggested that electromagnetic anomalies, unknown natural phenomena, or even extraterrestrial activity might account for the disappearances. While lacking scientific support, these theories reflected the deep unease that many felt about the official explanations and the continued absence of definitive answers. Today, Nome continues to exist on the edge of the world, its population still struggling with many of the same challenges that may have contributed to the disappearances of the late 20th century. The harsh environment remains unchanged, the isolation is as complete as ever, and Alaska's missing persons rates continue to exceed national averages. While no new disappearances matching the pattern of the previous decades have been reported, the memory of the missing 24 continues to haunt the community and anyone who examines their cases closely. The FBI's investigation may have provided official closure, but it failed to answer the deeper questions that Nome's disappearances raised about survival, community, and the limits of human knowledge. In a place where nature's power dwarfs human understanding, and where people can vanish as completely as if they had never existed, the line between natural explanation and something more mysterious becomes uncomfortably thin. The families of the disappeared continue to live without answers, their loved ones existing in a liminal space between the living and the dead. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Nome's mystery is how it reveals the fragility of human existence in extreme environments and the inadequacy of our systems for protecting vulnerable people. Whether the disappeared were victims of alcohol and weather, predators who understood how to exploit Nome's isolation, or something else entirely, their cases highlight how easily people can slip through the cracks in communities where survival itself is a daily challenge. As you consider the fate of Nome's missing 24, remember that their disappearances occurred not in some distant, primitive time, but during the modern era of communication, transportation, and law enforcement. If 24 people can vanish without explanation from a small American community in the latter half of the 20th century, it raises uncomfortable questions about how many other disappearances might be occurring in isolated places where statistical anomalies go unnoticed and unexplained. In Nome, Alaska, the Arctic wind still carries whispers of the missing, and the vast tundra keeps its secrets buried beneath snow and time.